Welcome to the Sponsored Rider Club podcast, your guide to motorsports sponsorship. Here's your host, Josh Weesey.
Welcome to this episode of the Sponsored Rider Club podcast, which is powered by AMSOIL. Today is a special day because I'm doing a solo show, and it's really all because I got excited about a specific topic. So it is going to be asking and answering the question, what if social media was no longer public? I'll tell you more about it when I get in the show, but it's kind of a crazy thought, and it might not be that crazy, though, in the next 3 to 5 years. So we're going to talk about that in this show and my thoughts on it and why I even brought it up in the first place. But before that, if this is your first time coming to this show and listening, I want to tell you a little bit more about why it exists. We are here to help you better understand the complexities of motorsports sponsorship. We want to help you navigate the different sponsorship programs out there. We want you to be able to build one, whether you're a racer, a weekend warrior, if you're a Jeeper, backcountry snowmobiler, ATV, UTV, monster truck, I don't know. Doesn't matter. We want you to listen to these interviews, and learn from them and then make changes to your sponsorship program as a result. Now, we need some help in making this show work. That's why AMSOIL is on board. And we also have a number of other companies that help us out. SolderWeld is one of them. They produce game-changing metal bonding technology, and they just ran a really cool program, Rescue Your Race, for the Mint 400. Really cool stuff there, but check out their new products. They have an off-road repair kit, which is pretty phenomenal. TopThePodium.com, they're experts in motorsports sponsorship. Bold Racing, they're a family race team and GSP XCV axle specialist. Crash Addict Industries, they provide human protection and extreme racing products. And I also want to shout out some of our other partners, NBRP, HMK USA, Studboy Traction, and then GSP XTV. Now, I have a few more things I want to cover with you. One, if you are getting value out of the show, head over to iTunes, leave a rating and review. We've got over 70 5-star ratings and reviews, and I would love to have more. That really helps this show perform well on iTunes, which then means we can continue to exist as a show and bring on amazing guests and then get amazing content. Also, I would love for you to subscribe regardless of whatever podcast platform you use. We're all over the place. We're on Stitcher. We're on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify. We're all over the place, so check those things out. Last thing I want to announce here is actually that I have an announcement coming up pretty soon. So if you're listening to this on the day it releases, you're going to have about a day or so to react to this. So it will be releasing on March 12th of 2019. And on March 13th at 9 p.m. Eastern, I'm going live with Brandon Tedizzle Cox. He was on the show a while back. Phenomenal guest, super smart. He runs the Sledders 2.0 Facebook group, and he also does a bunch of cool events on top of just being an awesome backcountry rider. So we're going to talk and catch up on things. So tune in for that. But I do have a special announcement that I'm going to be sharing live during that show. So, if for whatever reason you listen to this on the day it releases or the next day, you might still have time to head over to our Facebook page and watch our live show. All right, without further ado, let's get into the show. Okay, the reason why I chose to do this show tonight is because I read this article, I think it was last week, where Mark Zuckerberg, who is the CEO of Facebook, actually, maybe he's not the CEO anymore, I don't know. He's basically the dude that runs Facebook. And when you own Facebook and run Facebook, you also own and run Instagram. Countless times in the show, I ask people, what's their favorite platform, and I do a lot of polls on the Facebook group, the Sponsored Rider Club Facebook group, and say, what's your favorite platform? Instagram is always at the top. Facebook's usually pretty close too, but Instagram is definitely the favorite. But Mark Zuckerberg basically put a little hint out there that social media is going to be changing a lot in the near future, at least for Facebook and Instagram. Now, I'm not going to really get into what he said. I'm just going to focus on my interpretation and what it means potentially to us in the sponsorship world. So essentially what he said was that in the future he sees Facebook and Instagram or social media operating a little bit more like WhatsApp or like Messenger. So a lot more private, less public. So my question then that we're going to talk about today, what if social media was no longer public? So what he's implying, and again, I'm not getting into how he said it or anything like that. This is just, an interpretation, and I did read an article that basically, kind of hinted this stuff and helped me understand what it meant. But by him saying he pictures social media looking more like Messenger and WhatsApp, it's basically saying like a more private view, kind of like a Snapchat. The content that you put out there might not exist very long. And it might not be something that a company can come in and utilize, or it might not be something that, a public profile would be able to utilize. Meaning it's a lot more private, more personal, less public. So I'm trying to imagine in my mind what would that world look like. And, the best thing I can say, I mentioned a minute ago, is Snapchat, kind of like that, or Messenger, a lot more personalized. What would that mean for us, though? I mean, what if Instagram and Facebook were no longer the Instagram and Facebook that we've come to know and love? Although there are a few haters out there for Facebook right now, and sometimes it annoys me too. But what if it was different? We put a lot of stake in how many followers we have on Instagram and Facebook and what our engagement is. And companies look at that, right? They do it for their own social media pages. And they reach out to us, influencers, and they'll help us with whatever our program needs are, and we help them by sharing a public message. So I don't know. It could be a lot different in the future. I don't know how. Facebook and Instagram make their money off of businesses advertising, and maybe there would still be a way for this stuff to work, but I just want to picture it. What if it didn't happen? So we're going to talk more about that in this show. Now, right before I get a little bit deeper, I want to take a minute to thank the sponsors for this podcast.
What's up, everyone? This is Mike Pasquarella, founder of Desert Vets Racing. When the team goes racing, we always have our SolderWeld products with us. Keeping the cars in the fight is our number one concern. With SolderWeld, we can do that. SolderWeld is a leading company in the U.S. for aluminum repair. They specialize in radiator repair on the fly. If you're stuck in the middle of the trail or a race with a whole new radiator, oil pan, or canister, or even an aluminum line, you can fix it right then and there in a matter of minutes with their AMSOIL aluminum repair rods and flux. It's the only complete and lasting fix in the off-road community. SolderWeld's new UTV off-road kits fit in every ride and are easy to access on the fly.
SolderWeld continues to make a huge positive impact on this industry. So I really encourage you, get in there now. Go to SolderWeld.us. Check out their products because this stuff is changing the game. Two questions I get continuously about this show and about sponsorship is, do I need my own website and do I need a resume? The answer is, in my opinion, yes to both, and that's why we partner with TopThePodium.com. Now, if you want to see an example of what a professional website and what a professional resume looks like, you got to check out TopThePodium.com. They did my website. The Sponsored Rider Club Podcast website is sponsoredriderclubpodcast.com. That was created by Jeff Vanistall of TopThePodium.com. I think it's awesome. I get a lot of good feedback about it. And there's a number of other websites out there that Jeff has produced that are just phenomenal. So I think it's important in this world of social media where you have control of your content. That's what a website does. It gives you full control. We don't know what Facebook's going to do sometimes. We don't know what Instagram's going to do. We don't know what Twitter's going to do. So if we don't have that central location to direct people and house our content, there is some risk that we incur. So I strongly recommend getting a website, talking to TopThePodium.com. And then The resume, again, is massive, and if you want to stand out, get it done professionally. And honestly, it is one of the best ways to step up your game and present yourself in the best way possible. Safety is our overriding priority. I hear it all the time, but I have to ask myself, is it though? Is that the first thing we think of? Is that the first thing you think of? Over the past couple of years, we've seen the performance of production UTVs increase, somewhere around 350%. That means these machines give us a lot more opportunity to have fun and win races, but it also, unfortunately, gives us new opportunities to crash. And that's why we have partnered with Crash Addict Industries. The owner, Travis Pointer, became very accustomed to crashing early in his career. He saw it as inevitable, and he set out to make the process safer. With a passion for racing, welding, and engineering, Crash Addict Industries now produces full cage and other protection systems intentionally designed to protect you during an accident on the track. They also offer a line of human protection products through their vendors. Do this for me at this point. If you're racing with a stock cage right now, please go check out CrashAddict.com and at least just see what they have to offer. Even if you choose to go with a different company, please make safety your overriding priority. Family race team. Those are the first words that come to mind when I think of Bold Racing. And the next one is actually axles. Bold Racing is a premier distributor of GSP XTV axles. And if that wasn't cool enough, they just came out with an entirely new axle called the Revolution axle. It is a hollow tube axle. It's really cool. If you head over to their website, gspxtv.com, or you can find out more at boldracingltd.com, you can find out how this new axle technology works. So they are saying to view this as a fuse for your drivetrain. So the hollow tube CV axle twist technology actually increases the strength and reliability of the axle, and it also reduces stress on the drivetrain. Plus, honestly, it's super cool looking, and if people know me, they know that I really like cool looking stuff. So they come in this really cool gold color. Check it out. It's absolutely revolutionary. Okay, so let's get into this topic. It's not completely different from things we've talked about in the show before, because we have had conversations about Facebook or Instagram or, any social platform changing. Facebook has changed a lot over the years, and in some ways, it's negatively affected people's profiles. There's Facebook pages out there that have 100, 200, 300,000 followers that now, when they post something, they get 1% engagement, whereas they used to get 20% or 30% engagement. So it does happen. There has been a change based off of Facebook's algorithms, and they are trying to put more of a focus on, the individual experience. They're trying to maximize that. So what that comes down to is you got to pay to play. So if you want to get your content out there, if you're an athlete that's running a page or a business running a page, you usually have to pay to play. What I'm curious about now, though, is, we can adapt to that, but what do we do if the program either ceases to exist or completely changes its functionality to where you don't even have the opportunity to do an athlete page? Maybe you don't have an opportunity to boost a post. Maybe your Instagram profile turns into something only one person can view at a time. I don't know. I don't know what this could look like. Let's just assume, though, worst case scenario, you put something out there, you might not get a ton of people looking at it, or you might not be able to let it last. It might not become a curated profile. So let's talk about that. What does that mean? What can you potentially do just in case? Just to prepare. Make sure you're ready for pretty much anything. So I have a few things I'm going to break down. I'm actually going to kind of talk about this in 4 sections, and then there might be a few subcategories in each section. But the first one, and this is something that we have definitely talked about before, but I really want you to consider what this means, though, if social media were to no longer be what it is today. So that number one point is have a website. This is something that I did not take seriously very early on. I had a website, but it wasn't where I housed all my content at. I really focused on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. Since then, I have changed my strategy around a little bit, and I do have a website. It was made by Jeff Vanistal of TopThePodium.com, and I have all of my content there. So I own the domain. I own all of the content that's on there, and if Facebook went away, I still got my content. If Instagram went away, I still got my content. Now, I would be giving up a lot of other things. Facebook and Instagram, I've got some really cool content on there. I've got videos on Facebook that, I have archived, but they're there. And then in Instagram, I do not archive all of the photos that I put up there, so I would lose that experience. But my raw, true content, the stuff that really makes this show what it is, the audio podcast, I have all of that in one spot. And I still have curated content for all my episodes. I really encourage you to do something similar. Now, you can go full professional like I did with TopThePodium.com. You can make your own website. There's a lot of other platforms out there that are great to get started, and you can maintain them for a pretty low dollar value. I mean, some of these things could be, $3, $4, $5 a month. Maybe even less than that. I don't know. But obviously you can get more as you kind of step into, more professional looking content, more customizable, things like that. But I really do recommend that you have the website. Even if this social media apocalypse doesn't happen, you still can leverage having a website anyways. You can direct your sponsors there, and then that can point to your Facebook, that can point to your Twitter, your Instagram, maybe you're on TikTok, which I'll talk a little bit more about that in number 2. But yeah, you can definitely have a safe storage spot for your content. I highly, highly recommend it. All right, so that's number 1, have a website. Number 2 is be diversified. What I mean by that, I'm actually going to focus more on social media from this standpoint, but have your content portrayed in slightly different ways on multiple platforms. I talk a lot about Gary Vaynerchuk on this show because he is kind of the social media expert. What I'm finding more is that he's actually like the trends expert, so he pays attention to social media when it's booming, but when it falls apart, or if it falls apart, he is ready to adapt. I won't get into what he has talked about recently, but he has some thoughts on what is happening next with Facebook and Instagram ads. But yeah, we're not going to get into that today, but if you want to go search Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary V, get some insights, you will find a lot of good stuff on his predictions for the future. But what I mean here, be diversified, is, utilize YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram. Pick other platforms so that you're not only accessible on one. Now, here's the challenge with it. I would also love to tell you to focus on one to get good at it so that you have a really strong following. So there's people I know who are phenomenal with Instagram and are really, really horrible with Twitter. I'm horrible at all of them, but let's just say, you can't get really, really good at something unless you focus on it. So I understand that there's some risk there, but I would say focus on one, but be present on multiple platforms. So if, for whatever reason, the Instagram, Facebook apocalypse happens in the future, you still are, diversified in your content. You've got videos up on YouTube. You're on Snapchat, wherever it is. I talk about TikTok. I've tried to investigate TikTok recently. If you're listening to this show and you're over the age of 16, you probably have never seen TikTok, but I took Gary Vaynerchuk's advice and I tried to learn about it. That's one that he thinks is going to take off. I don't know exactly how to use it yet. I've just consumed some content, but it's definitely a different crowd from what I'm used to. But it is kind of interesting just how everything is portrayed. But there's different avenues to get your content out there, and maybe you'll have success, maybe you won't, but you do have the presence already established. Other ways to be diversified with your content so you're not solely reliant on Facebook and Instagram is, podcasts, or maybe it's some sort of live video or live streaming. Maybe I think there's something called like Twitch that they use for video games. I might be wrong about that one, but either way, the point here is if there's different ways for you to get your content out there, there's different avenues for you to establish your brand. So if one platform changes or goes away, you still got options. So number 2 here is be diversified. All right, number 3, develop your offline brand. This is not a new concept for the show, but I do need to hammer it home in this one. Developing your offline brand means having that presence outside of social media, off your website, offline. This comes across in many, many ways, and you should be doing this anyways as part of your sponsorship program, but I just need to reiterate it because there are some people who have been very successful that only focus online, and it's just there's a risk there. There's a risk there, especially with an emphasis on social media. But one of the ways to develop your offline brand is going to events. If you are trying to get into Monster Jam or you're already racing in Monster Jam, so for me personally, I just went to a Monster Jam event, so it's like it's in my head. But yeah, if you're interested in Monster Jam, you got to get out to the events. You got to actually go watch them, go meet the drivers, ask them questions, get contacts, get some FaceTime. Just watching them on a live feed or just watching social media or watching on television is not going to get you that FaceTime. So if you're trying to build that brand in Monster Jam, you need to be at those events, meeting the drivers, doing those sorts of things. If you are a backcountry snowmobiler, for example, you need to go to Heydays, which is every year in Minnesota in September. You've got to go to that event, get some FaceTime, connect with sponsors, get out there. You got to do it. If you're doing desert racing or you want to get into desert racing, go to desert races. Mint 400, UTV World Championship, both of those are great places where you can meet vendors, you can meet drivers, you can see how the race is run, and that is a good option. If you're into Supercross, you want to get there, go to Supercross events. If you just want to make contact with brands, go to trade shows and ask those questions, or maybe connect with a brand and help represent their product at these trade shows. So that's not new, but need to emphasize it. The next one in developing your offline brand, which is like a sub category here, is community engagement activities, community engagement events. So that means if you're a racer, let's say you're racing GNCC, get out there to one of your local stores or, a local dealership or somewhere within your community where you can show off your race machine. Let people come and look at it. Maybe they have hot dogs and popcorn. I don't know. Do something like that. Get involved with a local charity, or maybe it's a slightly larger charity, but something where you can actually go to the activity and promote and build your brand while also helping with a good cause. A good example of this is there's a number of backcountry riders who either volunteer or help lead avalanche societies. You can share your expertise, build more expertise, network, and really make a good name for your brand. And at the time, maybe you are promoting, your gear sponsor. That's a good thing. That's another way that you can have your offline brand nice and established. The next thing is, it's going back to the basics here. Having your equipment decked out in the colors and or logos that represent your brands. Social media allows us to really exploit the looks of our vehicles and our machines because we can take a picture and it gets everywhere. But don't forget that there are still human beings out in that physical world that can see your machine, it can see the logos, it can see whatever is going on. So if you've got a trailer and you can wrap that trailer, well, everybody who sees it during your travel is going to get that exposure, and you can actually track and trend that. It's old school. You probably should be doing this anyways, but it's the basics and it still works. Same goes with if you are a racer and you're in the pits. That is a good opportunity for people, especially if they have some sort of pit pass, to engage with them and show off your stuff. So I don't think I need to talk too much more about that. I think you get the point. Developing your offline brand would be very crucial if the social media apocalypse happens. Last but not least, the fourth point that I want to talk to is common sense, but common sense is really not all that common. It is tough to remember this. You have to be ready to adapt. If your platform is crumbling, there might be a point where you have to jump ship. You should be paying attention to this. If you see, despite your best efforts, despite your best pivots, despite making great content and checking off all the boxes, posting at the right times, if you see your content losing engagement, losing excitement, and maybe you see other people around you similarly losing the engagement, it might be time to really assess if you have your focus in the right area. Now, there's probably a lot of people listening right now that are thinking, am I at that point? I'm having some issues with Facebook. Am I ready to jump ship? I don't know. I'm not going to be able to answer that for you. I don't even know how to answer it for myself. But that's why I'm talking about it, because it is important and you are going to have to think about it. When is the right time to abandon ship and say, this platform is no longer serving my needs? What do I need to do to better support my brand and better support my sponsors' brands? I'll use Twitter, for example. Twitter has been a challenge for a lot of people on this show to have, strength in. There's definitely people who have done it. Don't get me wrong, but they are probably 5% or less of the guests that have been on here have figured out and done well with Twitter. If you are really struggling with Twitter and you cannot figure it out and you're still spending, 20, 30 minutes a day on it, I don't know what it is, maybe it's time to scale that back to 5 or eliminate it entirely. It's tough to do, especially when I just gave you a tip back on number 2 is be diversified. But there is a certain point where you might say this platform is just not doing it anymore. If we were all sticking around with, the dying platforms, we'd be on MySpace right now posting up pictures of our stuff. I don't know if MySpace still exists or not, but I'm pretty sure that thing is gone. So at some point, people had to abandon ship and say, I am done with MySpace. There's probably some of the younger generation that's like, what's MySpace? I get it. Actually, there's probably some people of the younger generation that are like, what's Facebook? But either way, the point here is be ready to adapt. You might need to pull the plug on your platform and just say, we're done with it, I'm moving on. At that point, maybe that'll give you an opportunity to go back into point number 2, which is be diversified, and pull out another type of social media or content sharing platform. So, quick summary here. What if social media was no longer public? What if the social media apocalypse did happen and you wake up tomorrow, Instagram is no longer Instagram, it is something else? What do you need to do? My recommendations are these 4 things. 1, have a website. 2, be diversified. 3, develop your offline brand. And 4, be ready to adapt. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the sponsored Rider Club podcast, which is powered by AMSOIL. Make sure you follow us on social media. Pay specific attention to our Facebook page. That's where we do our live shows. To get some insider access to upcoming guests, go ahead and check out the Sponsored Rider Club on Facebook. A special thanks goes out to the sponsors of this show: AMSOIL, SolderWeld, Bold Racing, TopThePodium.com, and Crash Addict Industries. And I also want to shout out some of our other partners: GSP XTV, MBRP, HMK USA, and Stud Boy Traction. I look forward to serving you again next week. Until then, have fun and ride safe.